There's a moment in your 20s when home stops feeling like home. The walls you grow up in start to shrink, and the only way out is through a leap into the unknown. But what happens when the leap lands you somewhere unexpected? For Kaya, New York was too small and Detroit became her canvas. Detroit isn't just a city, it's a contradiction. Broken but alive. It's a place where the past and future collide. For Kaya, it wasn't just about moving away. It was about finding a city that can reflect her art, her struggle, and her voice. But leaving home isn't just about geography, it's about identity. In New York, Kaya was the girl who sketched in the margins. In Detroit, she's the artist who paints on walls. The city didn't just give her space, it gave her permission to become someone new. Leaving home is never easy. It's messy. It's lonely. But it's also transformative. Kaya didn't just move to Detroit, she moved into herself. And in a city that knows a thing or two about reinvention, she's learning to build a home wherever her art takes her.
Before coming to Detroit, I actually was very timid about my own art practice and just doing things in general in the community. But the support and kind of seeing everybody else just go out and do it no matter what definitely did put some little hair on my chest, to say the least. Hey y'all, my name is Kaya. I'm an artist and welcome to my studio. Come on in. So this one is more of my original style, I would say. I grew up watching a lot of anime, so my native drawing and painting is very reminiscent on that. I think now I try to experiment a little bit more on the shading, and definitely incorporating more of my abstract kind of movements into this now. This is kind of heartbreak, emotional, one of those healing moments for me. And this piece was titled, I Just Wanted My Lick Back. So yeah, that's that. And then this one is my abstract series. This is definitely one of the earlier versions of what they look like. This was done with paint, oil pastel, and spray paint. And I talk a lot about themes of spirituality, religion in my works, period. So that shows up a lot. And you could see it with different, the hand on the head, the white and the black is just angels and demons constantly fighting. And you'll see a lot of crosses, halos, wings, kind of these bigger, almost pieces of bodies that feel like God. Very nostalgic, very nostalgic.
What you working on?
So this right here is a part of my series when I think about love. It also is an attachment with that heartbreak one, which is so silly. But I think when I first started the series, I talked a lot about kind of these negative emotions that are tied with love. And now I'm in a much better place, just spiritually, emotionally, physically, to talk about these brighter pieces of joy. For this one, I wanted to talk a lot about the joy in creation, and really thinking about my childhood and things that I just like to do. And blue's always been my favorite color. So I want to keep it very monochromatic and kind of just playing in all these versions of blue, which is essentially all these versions of me. So yeah. The hardest part about leaving home was honestly leaving my family. I think moving to a place where I didn't have as much, or my mom or my immediate family close to me, that was the hardest part for sure. Honestly, I wanted to go somewhere where I could city build and participate in kind of more of infrastructure and the growing of a city. I think where I'm from, it was kind of too late. So I wanted to pick some place that was full of potential, but also, not to say a lot easier or a bit smaller, but something that allowed for me to kind of move amongst the community a lot easier. And I think that was one of my main inspirations. When I experienced imposter syndrome, I like to kind of almost be nostalgic and force myself to look at things that I have done. One, just for inspiration, and two, I think it also forces you like in this moment of like, damn, I really did that, you know? And sometimes to get out of it, you need to remind yourself of who you are and the things you've done and like your physical abilities, and seeing things like from a different perspective helps all the time. I do experience loneliness. Well, I did experience loneliness when I first arrived to Detroit, just because of how like intertwined everybody was in terms of like their family, and not being with mine kind of emphasized that part. But now I feel much better, and I don't think I experience it as much.
So what's this coffee spot you was telling us about?
The name, why'd you put me up the spot?
No, so you are a transplant. Okay.
I am a transplant for real. I don't know full names, and I don't know street name either. So, Mad Cat. There we go.
Home to me now is less of something that's like a physical place and more of like an essence of something. So like even just like making something my like comfort zone, that's more of a home. So even though this is like my home, it's more because of like the things and like the safety I feel. Even like when my parents come, like I always say like, oh, you know, I'm home, even though it's not physically where I grew up. It's still like the things that bring me back to center. The last time I experienced a creative drought was right before graduation. Just because I was so focused on school, I had stopped painting for a while, and I had really bad imposter syndrome. And it took me like, not a while, but definitely some pushing to get back. I feel like the moment I knew I made the right decision of moving to Detroit was after I made my first art show. I felt like the response was like insane, and like the people I met, like I talk to now and like work with continuously. So it definitely did kind of like affirm me in that moment that everything was like gonna be okay. And even like looking back now, I know that's like the point where I knew like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I think I've been pretty good. I don't know about other people's experience. I think for me personally here in Detroit, I think that I've been kind of like pretty welcomed. I've never felt like anything different. But I will say one thing about Detroiters especially, you just have to be yourself. Like if you're not yourself, I feel like you guys could sniff that out and you don't like that. But other than that, I feel pretty cool.